They called it the Great Abandonment. When the Zephyrian refugees limped toward the galactic core in their dying ships, every civilized world sealed their borders. The Altarian Council declared them genetically contaminated. The Vegan Empire branded them carriers of chaos. Even the peaceful Centauri Federation, known for their humanitarian aid, turned away their transmissions without a second thought. 43 billion souls, fleeing from something so terrible that it had consumed their entire star system, found every door in the galaxy slammed shut. Every door except one. Earth. That small, unremarkable world on the galactic rim, home to the youngest species in known space, opened their arms wide and said two words that would echo through history. Welcome home. What the galaxy didn't understand was that humanity had spent their entire existence being the underdogs, the outcasts, the ones everyone else looked down upon. They knew what it felt like to be abandoned, and when the true horror that had destroyed the Zephyrian homeworld finally revealed itself, the galaxy would learn why humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their military might. It was their stubborn refusal to leave anyone behind. This is the story of how the galaxy's greatest mistake became humanity's finest hour, and how the species everyone had written off became the saviors they never knew they needed. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, watching the massive Zephyrian refugee fleet limp through the void toward Earth. The sight took her breath away, not because of their ship's impressive size, but because of their terrible condition. Hull breaches had been hastily patched with whatever materials they could find. Energy signatures flickered weakly across their vessels like dying stars. These weren't the proud explorers she remembered from the galactic databases. These were survivors clinging to life by their fingertips. "Admiral Rodriguez wants to speak with you, Captain," her communications officer announced. Sarah nodded, straightening her uniform. The holographic display shimmered to life, revealing Admiral Maria Rodriguez, Earth's newly appointed Minister of Refugee Affairs. The position had been created just 3 weeks ago when the first desperate transmissions from the Zephyrian fleet reached Earth's listening posts. "Captain Chen, what's your assessment of their condition?" Rodriguez asked without preamble. Sarah glanced at her tactical display, where hundreds of red warning indicators painted a grim picture. "It's worse than we thought, Admiral. Their lead vessel is barely holding together. Life support is failing on at least 30 ships, and their food synthesizers are operating at 12% efficiency. They're starving out there." Rodriguez's expression hardened. The Galactic Council is still refusing to acknowledge their existence. Apparently, the Altarian delegate called them plague carriers in yesterday's session. Plague carriers? Sarah's first officer, Commander David Park, looked up from his station in disbelief. These people fled their entire star system. What plague could possibly be worse than losing your home? That's what we're going to find out. Rodriguez replied. "Captain, you're authorized to begin immediate humanitarian aid. Full medical support, emergency food supplies, and temporary housing arrangements. The President has declared Earth's entire Luna facility available for refugee processing." The bridge fell silent. Luna Base was humanity's largest off-world installation capable of housing 2 million people. Opening it entirely to refugees was unprecedented, especially for a species that the rest of the galaxy had condemned. "Admiral," Sarah said carefully, "the Galactic Council has made their position clear. If we provide sanctuary to the Zephyrians, we risk economic sanctions, trade embargoes, even military action." Rodriguez's smile was grim but determined. "Captain, in the past month, Earth has been called primitive, backward, and dangerously naive by every major galactic power. They've questioned our intelligence, our technology, and our right to exist among civilized species. You know what? Maybe they're right about us being different. But I'd rather be dangerously naive than turn away people who need help." 3 hours later, Sarah found herself aboard the Zephyrian flagship, walking through corridors that reeked of desperation and fear. The ship's artificial gravity flickered occasionally, sending loose debris floating through the air. Emergency lighting cast everything in a sickly red glow. Yet despite the dire conditions, she was struck by the dignity of the Zephyrian people. They stood 7 feet tall on average, with elongated limbs and pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Their large, dark eyes held depths of intelligence that reminded Sarah of ancient Earth philosophers. Even in their current state, wearing tattered clothes and bearing the marks of hardship, they carried themselves with quiet grace. Elder Cathara, the unofficial leader of the refugee fleet, met Sarah in what had once been an elegant observation lounge. Now it served as a makeshift command center, filled with jury-rigged computers and communications equipment. "Captain Chen," Cathara said in accented but fluent English, "your species' offer of assistance is unexpected. We have been refused by 17 different civilizations. Most did not even respond to our distress calls." Sarah sat across from the elder, noting the exhaustion etched into his features. Elder Kithara, humanity has a saying: we leave no one behind. It doesn't matter what species you are or where you come from. If you need help, we'll provide it. Kithara's expression shifted, confusion mixing with hope. But surely you understand the risks? The Galactic Council has classified us as potentially dangerous. Your own standing among the civilized worlds could be compromised. Let me tell you something about humanity, Sarah said, leaning forward. We've been the new kids in this galaxy for less than 50 years. Every established civilization has looked down on us, questioned our capabilities, and treated us like we don't belong. So when someone else gets that same treatment, we tend to take it personally. She gestured toward the viewport where Earth hung like a blue jewel against the stars. That planet down there has seen its share of refugees throughout history. People fleeing wars, disasters, persecution. We've learned that the true measure of a civilization isn't how it treats its powerful allies, but how it treats those who have nowhere else to turn. Kithara was quiet for a long moment, his large eyes studying Sarah's face. You do not even know why we fled. The horror that destroyed our world, it defies comprehension. Yet you offer us sanctuary without question. Then tell me, Sarah said simply. Help me understand what you're running from so we can help you run faster. The elder's hands trembled slightly as he activated a portable holographic projector. The image that materialized made Sarah's blood turn cold. It showed a star system, but something was terribly wrong with the central star. Dark tendrils seemed to be growing from it, reaching out like the arms of some cosmic nightmare. We called it the Devourer, Kithara whispered. It appeared in our outer system 18 months ago. At first we thought it was some kind of stellar phenomenon. A new type of dark matter, perhaps. Our scientists were excited to study it. The hologram shifted, showing the tendrils growing larger, spreading toward the inner planets. It consumed everything it touched. Not just destroyed, consumed. The matter wasn't vaporized or scattered. It simply ceased to exist, as if it had never been. Planets, moons, space stations, ships, all gone. Sarah watched in horror as the simulation showed the dark tendrils reaching Zephyrian Prime, the species' homeworld. The planet seemed to struggle against the darkness for a moment before simply winking out of existence. 43 billion people lived on our worlds. Kithara continued, his voice barely audible. Only those of us who were in deep space when it reached the inner system survived. We are all that remains of a civilization that spanned 3-star systems and lasted for over 10,000 years. The weight of that loss settled over the room like a shroud. Sarah tried to imagine what it would feel like to watch Earth simply disappear, taking with it every human being except for a few scattered survivors. I'm so sorry, she said, the words feeling inadequate but necessary. No one should have to endure what you've been through. Kithara looked up at her, and for the first time, Sarah saw tears in his ancient eyes. The worst part is the not knowing. What was it? Where did it come from? Is it still spreading? We sent warning transmissions to every major civilization, pleading with them to investigate, to prepare. They all dismissed us as delusional refugees spreading panic. Sarah stood up, her jaw set with determination. They can dismiss you all they want, but they're about to learn that humanity doesn't dismiss anyone. We're going to help you, Elder Kithara. All of you. And we're going to find out what this devourer is and how to stop it. Over the next week, Earth transformed into a massive humanitarian operation. Luna Base was converted into a refugee processing center, with temporary housing units springing up across the lunar surface. The International Space Agency redirected supply ships from Mars to deliver food, medical supplies, and basic necessities. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading xenobiologist, worked around the clock to understand Zephyrian physiology and create compatible medical treatments. Her team discovered that, despite their alien appearance, Zephyrians had remarkably similar biological needs to humans. With minor modifications, Earth's food synthesizers could produce nutritionally complete meals for them. The cultural exchange was immediate and profound. Zephyrian children, wide-eyed with wonder, played games with human children who had come to Luna Base with their families. The language barrier dissolved quickly as translation software adapted to Zephyrian vocal patterns. Within days, mixed groups of human and Zephyrian teenagers could be seen exploring the lunar surface together, pointing at Earth and sharing stories through gestures when words failed. But not everyone on Earth was happy about the situation. Protests erupted in major cities, led by groups calling themselves Earth First and Human Priority. They argued that humanity had its own problems to solve before taking on the burden of alien refugees. The debate reached a fever pitch during a heated session of the Global Parliament. Representative James Morrison from the North American Federation stood before the assembly, his face red with indignation. "We're talking about 43 billion refugees," he shouted. 43 billion. Our entire planet only has 12 billion people. Where are we supposed to put them? How are we supposed to feed them? And what happens when whatever destroyed their world comes looking for them here? President Chen Wei responded calmly from the podium. Representative Morrison raises valid concerns about logistics. Yes, this is an enormous undertaking. Yes, it will stretch our resources, but I would ask the Assembly to consider this. What if it were us? What if Earth had been destroyed, and the few million survivors limping through space in failing ships were turned away by every world they approached? Would we not hope that somewhere in the galaxy there existed a people compassionate enough to say, yes, we will help? The chamber erupted in applause and boos in equal measure. The vote was closer than anyone expected. 847 in favor of continuing the refugee assistance, 723 against. Humanity had chosen compassion, but barely. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was not sitting idle. Ambassador Vextar of the Altarian Council arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system with a fleet of 12 warships. His message was broadcast on all frequencies. People of Earth, you are harboring dangerous refugees against the express wishes of the Galactic Council. These Zephyrians may carry biological or technological contamination that threatens all civilized life. You have 72 hours to surrender them to our custody or face the consequences of your actions. The message sent shockwaves through Earth's government. Humanity's space fleet consisted of 37 ships, most of them exploration vessels with minimal weaponry. The Altarian fleet could reduce Earth's orbital installations to scrap metal in a matter of hours. President Chen called an emergency meeting of Earth's military leadership. General Patricia Hayes, commander of Earth's Space Defense Force, laid out the grim reality. "We can't fight them," she said bluntly. "Our weapons are a generation behind theirs, our ships are outnumbered 3-1, and they have experience in actual space combat. We've never fought a real war." "So what are you suggesting?" the president asked. "We negotiate, give them some of the refugees, maybe the leadership. Show good faith. It's the only way to avoid total destruction." The room fell silent. Finally, President Chen spoke. "General, with all due respect, that's not who we are. We don't trade innocent lives for our own safety. If humanity is going to take a stand in this galaxy, it might as well be for something that matters." As Earth's government debated their response, Elder Cathara made a decision that would change everything. He approached Captain Chen with a proposal that no one saw coming. "Captain, your people have shown us kindness beyond measure. We cannot allow you to suffer for our sake. This is the book, it's about history. 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 This is the book, it's about history." Sarah stared at him in shock. "Elder Cathara, you can't be serious. Your people are barely surviving as it is. You need medical care, food, time to rebuild. And besides, we made you a promise." "A promise that may cost your species everything," Cathara replied sadly. "We have seen the face of cosmic horror. We know what it means to lose everything in the blink of an eye. We will not watch it happen to another people because of us." But Sarah had already made up her mind. "Elder, let me share something with you. In human history, there have been moments when we had to choose between safety and principle. Sometimes we chose wrong. But the times we chose principle, even when it cost us dearly, those are the moments that defined us as a species. This is one of those moments." She paused, looking out at the refugee ship still arriving at Luna Base. "Besides, I don't think running is the answer anymore. This devourer of yours, whatever it is, it's not going to stop with your star system. Eventually, every civilization in this galaxy is going to have to face it. When that day comes, I'd rather we face it together." As the 72-hour deadline approached, humanity prepared for the impossible. Earth's small fleet positioned itself between the Altarian ships and Luna Base. Civilian vessels were evacuated from the outer system. Emergency broadcasts urged calm while secretly preparing the population for the worst. But in the depths of space, something else was stirring. Long-range sensors began picking up anomalous readings from the direction of the former Zephyrian star system. At first, the signals were dismissed as background radiation, but as the hours passed, the readings grew stronger and more disturbing. Dr. Amara Singh, Earth's chief astrophysicist, stared at her instruments in growing alarm. The The readings showed massive gravitational distortions moving through space at impossible speeds. Whatever had consumed the Zephyrian worlds wasn't content to stay in one place. It was spreading, moving toward the galactic core where most of civilization made their home. And it was accelerating. As the first 24 hours of the deadline passed, humanity found itself caught between two impossible situations: surrender the refugees to the Altarian fleet or face destruction from an alien armada. But unknown to both humans and Altarians, a third option was rapidly approaching from the darkness of deep space. The Devourer had found their scent, and it was hungry for more than just matter and energy. It was hungry for the one thing that had allowed Zephyrian civilization to survive for 10,000 years, and the one thing that was now drawing it inexorably toward Earth. It was hungry for hope. Dr. Cinnamon. Amara Singh burst into the emergency command center, her tablet clutched in trembling hands. The readings she carried would change everything humanity thought they knew about their situation. "Admiral Rodriguez, we have a massive problem," she announced, her voice cutting through the tense conversations about the Altarian ultimatum. "The gravitational anomalies I've been tracking, they're not random. They're following a deliberate path through space." Rodriguez looked up from the tactical display showing the standoff between Earth's fleet and the Altarian warships. "Dr. Singh, unless this is directly related to our immediate survival, it'll have to wait." "It is related," Singh insisted, activating her tablet's holographic projector. The three-dimensional star map that appeared showed a terrifying pattern. Dark tendrils stretched across multiple star systems, with a central mass moving steadily toward the galactic core. The Devourer isn't just consuming random worlds. It's following something specific: high concentrations of quantum consciousness fields. Elder Kithara, who had been quietly observing from the corner, suddenly straightened. "Quantum consciousness? But that's impossible. Only 3 species in the galaxy have developed consciousness fields advanced enough to register on deep space sensors." Singh nodded grimly. "The Zephyrians, the Altarians, and humans," Rodriguez finished, the color draining from her face. The implications hit everyone in the room simultaneously. The Devourer hadn't been randomly consuming worlds. It had been hunting specific targets, drawn to species with highly developed consciousness fields. The Zephyrians had been the closest target. Now it was heading toward the next largest concentration, the galactic core, where the Altarians and dozens of other advanced civilizations made their home. "How long do we have?" Rodriguez asked. Singh consulted her calculations. "At current speed, it'll reach the outer systems of Altarian space in approximately 18 months. But there's something else." She manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on Earth's solar system. "Our consciousness field signature is growing stronger. Taking in the Zephyrian refugees has amplified it exponentially. We're not just a target anymore. We're a beacon." Captain Chen, who had been listening via communication link from the Harmony, spoke up. "So we're all in danger. The Altarians, us, everyone in the galactic core. This thing is coming for all of us." Admiral Rodriguez stared at the display for a long moment before making a decision that would define humanity's future. "Captain Chen, I want you to transmit all of Dr. Singh's data to Ambassador Vextar. Full disclosure. Everything we know about the Devourer's path and its apparent targeting system." The room erupted in protests. "Admiral, that could be seen as a threat," General Hayes objected. "They'll think we're trying to manipulate them." "Maybe," Rodriguez replied calmly. "Or maybe they'll realize that we're all in this together, whether they like it or not." Aboard the Altarian flagship Sovereign Justice, Ambassador Vextar received the human transmission with skepticism that quickly transformed into horror. The Altarians had always prided themselves on their advanced understanding of consciousness field theory. As the data sank in, Vextar realized that the humans were right. The Devourer wasn't just a random cosmic disaster. It was a predator. And every advanced civilization in the galaxy was on its menu. Vextar immediately contacted the Galactic Council. The emergency session that followed was unlike anything in the Council's 1,000-year history. Representatives from 47 different species argued, pleaded, and demanded action as the terrible truth became clear. Councillor Thex of the Vegan Empire spoke first. "The human data cannot be trusted. They're clearly trying to manipulate us into accepting their illegal refugee operation." But High Scientist RL of the Centauri Federation had already run her own analysis. "I verified the human calculations independently. The threat is real. The Devourer consumed the Zephyrian systems because their consciousness field was the strongest in that region. Now it's heading directly for the galactic core, where our combined consciousness fields create an irresistible target." The debate raged for hours. Some species called for immediate military action, while others demanded further study. A few suggested abandoning the galactic core entirely and fleeing to distant spiral arms. But it was Counselor Veltar of the ancient archivists who raised the most disturbing question of all. If this entity feeds on consciousness fields and our combined presence in the core makes us vulnerable, perhaps the solution is to reduce our consciousness signatures. Suspend all advanced AI research, limit psychic development programs, restrict quantum consciousness experiments. The suggestion sent chills through the assembly. What Veltar was essentially proposing was a form of technological and evolutionary regression, deliberately dumbing down their civilizations to make themselves less appetizing to the devourer. That's not a solution, declared Minister Korax of the Hegemony Trade Federation. That's surrender. We'd be sacrificing everything that makes us civilized to hide from this threat. Meanwhile, on Luna Base, an unlikely alliance was forming. Zephyrian scientists worked alongside human researchers, sharing knowledge that had been accumulating for millennia. Elena Vasquez found herself working with Zephyrian quantum physicist Mordan, trying to understand the fundamental nature of consciousness fields. Your species has an unusual property, Mordan observed as they studied brain scans of human volunteers. Most civilizations develop consciousness fields gradually over millions of years. But humans seem to have developed yours very recently, in evolutionary terms and with remarkable intensity. Vasquez nodded, examining the data. We've always been adaptable. Maybe that extends to consciousness development as well. But what does that mean for our situation? It means, Mordan said slowly, that humanity might be uniquely equipped to understand the devourer. Your consciousness fields are young but powerful, flexible rather than rigid. You might be able to adapt in ways that older civilizations cannot. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Earth's Orbital Defense Network. Captain Jennifer Walsh, commander of the monitoring station, appeared on screen with barely contained excitement. Dr. Vasquez, we're picking up something incredible. The refugee ships. Their consciousness signatures are changing. Not diminishing, but somehow merging with human consciousness fields. It's creating a hybrid pattern we've never seen before. The implications were staggering. As humans and Zephyrians worked together, lived together, and faced their common fears together, their consciousness fields were beginning to synchronize in unprecedented ways. Instead of two separate signatures, they were creating something entirely new. Elder Cathara arrived at the laboratory an hour later, bringing with him a piece of ancient Zephyrian technology that he had kept hidden until now. It was a consciousness field amplifier, designed to boost telepathic communication across vast distances. We use devices like this to maintain unity across our star systems, he explained. But in the presence of human consciousness fields, it's behaving differently. Instead of amplifying existing patterns, it's creating entirely new ones. Dr. Singh joined the growing group of scientists, her astrophysics expertise adding another crucial piece to the puzzle. If we can understand how this hybrid consciousness field works, we might be able to do more than just hide from the devourer. We might be able to fight it. But their research was interrupted by urgent communications from the Altarian fleet. Ambassador Vexstar was requesting immediate discussion with Earth's leadership. When a holographic conference convened, Vexstar's usual composure had cracked, revealing genuine fear beneath his diplomatic facade. Admiral Rodriguez, he began. The Galactic Council has reached a decision. We are prepared to overlook your harbor of Zephyrian refugees in exchange for full cooperation against the devourer threat. We need every consciousness-capable species working together if we're going to survive this. Rodriguez kept her expression neutral. What kind of cooperation are you talking about, Ambassador? Full technological sharing. Combined research efforts. Joint military operations. The Council is prepared to offer humanity full membership in galactic civilization, with all the rights and privileges that entails. It was everything humanity had dreamed of since first making contact with galactic civilization 50 years ago. Full membership meant access to technologies that can advance human civilization by thousands of years. It meant respect, recognition, and a place among the stars that humans had always felt they deserved. But Rodriguez knew there was a catch. There always was. What's the price, she asked. Vexstar's expression hardened slightly. The Zephyrian refugees must be relocated to a quarantine system at the galactic rim. Their consciousness signatures are too strong, too unstable. They're making the hybrid field effects unpredictable. The room fell silent. After everything they had been through, after all the progress in understanding and cooperation, the Galactic Council was still asking humanity to abandon the very people they had sworn to protect. Elder Kaithara, who had been listening to the conversation, stepped forward, Admiral Rodriguez, you should accept their offer. My people have caused enough trouble for yours. We will go willingly to whatever system they choose. But Rodriguez shook her head.
Elder Kithara, with respect, that decision isn't yours to make alone. And Ambassador Vexstar, I'm afraid humanity's answer is no.
We won't trade the Zephyrians for galactic membership. Vexstar's facade cracked completely. Admiral, you don't understand the stakes. The Devourer will be here in less than 18 months. Without combined galactic resources, none of us will survive. You're condemning billions of beings to death for the sake of 43 billion refugees.
No, Rodriguez replied firmly.
I'm refusing to abandon our principles for the sake of political convenience. If the galaxy wants humanity's help against the Devourer, they'll get it. But we do this together. Humans, Zephyrians, Altarians, everyone. Or not at all. The communication link closed with Vexter's angry declaration that humanity had chosen its fate. Within hours, the Altarian fleet departed Earth's solar system, but not before transmitting a final message to every ship and station in the system. By order of the Galactic Council, Earth and its solar system are hereby declared a quarantine zone. No ships are to enter or leave this system without express Council permission. Any violation will be met with immediate destruction. Humanity was now truly alone, cut off from the rest of galactic civilization. But they weren't facing their isolation and despair. Instead, something remarkable was happening on Luna Base and throughout the solar system. The cooperation between humans and Zephyrians was deepening every day. Human engineers worked with Zephyrian technicians to repair the refugee ships. Human doctors learned Zephyrian healing techniques while Zephyrian physicians shared their advanced biotechnology. Most importantly, human and Zephyrian children played together, learned together, and began to see each other not as separate species, but as one extended family. The consciousness field effects were becoming more pronounced. Telepathic communication was developing spontaneously among mixed groups of humans and Zephyrians. Problem-solving capabilities were enhanced when the two species worked together. Most remarkably, creative and artistic expression was reaching new heights as human emotion blended with Zephyrian intellectual sophistication. Dr. Vasquez made the breakthrough while studying brain scans of a mixed human-Zephyrian research team. "Look at this," she called to her colleagues, displaying the neurological data. When humans and Zephyrians work together on complex problems, their brain activity synchronizes in ways that shouldn't be possible. It's as if they're becoming a collective intelligence. The implications were staggering, but before they could fully explore them, long-range sensors detected something that changed everything.
A new signal was approaching from deep space. Not the chaotic, destructive signature of the Devourer, but something else entirely. It was another refugee fleet, but this one wasn't Zephyrian.
The ships were unfamiliar. Their design unlike anything in the galactic databases. When the first transmission came through, it was in a language that no one had ever heard before.
But somehow the mixed human-Zephyrian teams could understand it. "This is Nexus Commander Velnara of the Synthesis Collective," the transmission said. "We are refugees from the spiral arm beyond the galactic barrier. Our worlds were consumed by the entity you call the Devourer 6 months ago. We seek sanctuary and allies in the fight against the cosmic predator that threatens all consciousness-bearing life." The transmission continued with data that made human and Zephyrian scientists exchange shocked glances. The Synthesis Collective had been fighting the Devourer for over 2 years. They had developed weapons and strategies based on consciousness field manipulation. Most importantly, they had discovered something crucial about the entity's nature.
The Devourer is not simply consuming matter and energy. Velnara's message continued. It is consuming consciousness itself, using the life force of entire civilizations to grow stronger.
But we have learned that combined consciousness fields, multiple species working in true unity, can resist its feeding. The entity cannot consume what it cannot separate.
As the new refugee fleet approached Earth's solar system, humanity faced another choice. The Galactic Council's quarantine was still in effect. Accepting these new refugees would be another act of defiance that would further isolate Earth from galactic civilization. But it would also provide them with allies who actually understood how to fight the approaching horror. Admiral Rodriguez convened an emergency session of Earth's government. The debate was fierce but brief.
Humanity had already chosen its path when they welcomed the Zephyrians. They would not change course now.
"Send a message to the Synthesis Collective," Rodriguez ordered. "Tell them Earth's solar system is open to all who seek shelter from the darkness. And tell them we're ready to learn how to fight." As the new fleet approached Luna Base, Elder Kythara stood beside Captain Chen in the observation deck. Together, they watched ships of 3 different species preparing to work as one.
"Captain," Kythara said quietly, "I believe your species has started something that will change the galaxy forever. Not through conquest or dominance, but through something far more powerful. What's that? Chen asked. Kithara's large eyes reflected the starlight filtering through the viewport.
Hope, Captain. You've shown us all that hope is not a luxury we can afford to abandon. It's the only weapon we have against the darkness.
But even as the three species began working together in unprecedented cooperation, deep space monitors continued to track the Devourer's relentless approach. The entity had consumed 2 war star systems since leaving Zephyrian space. Its consciousness signature was growing stronger with each feeding, and its speed was increasing. More disturbing still were the reports from the Synthesis Collective about the entity's feeding pattern. It didn't just consume consciousness. It learned from it, adapted to it, became more sophisticated with each civilization it devoured. The devourer that would eventually reach Earth would be far more dangerous than the one that had destroyed the Zephyrian worlds. Time was running out, and humanity's greatest test was yet to come.
6 months after the arrival of the Synthesis Collective, Earth's solar system had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. Luna Base now housed representatives from 3 different species, while research stations throughout the system buzzed with collaborative activity that defied every established rule of interstellar relations.
The consciousness field effects had evolved beyond anything Dr. Vasquez and her team had initially imagined.
What had started as simple synchronization between humans and Zephyrians had become something far more profound with the addition of the Synthesis Collective. The 3 species weren't just working together, they were becoming something new.
Commander Velnara of the Synthesis Collective stood before the joint council that now governed their alliance. Her species was unlike anything in the galactic databases, tall and ethereal with translucent skin that seemed to shift between different hues depending on their emotional state. They were, as their name suggested, a collective consciousness that had learned to function as both individuals and a unified mind. The Devourer has consumed the hegemony outer colonies, she reported, her voice carrying harmonics that made it sound like multiple people speaking in perfect unison.
Our long-range sensors indicate it will reach the galactic core in approximately 6 months. When it does, the combined consciousness fields of 47 different civilizations will create a feeding opportunity unlike anything it has experienced.
Elder Kithara studied the star charts with growing alarm. The entity will become exponentially more powerful after consuming the core worlds.
If we're going to stop it, we must act before it reaches them. Admiral Rodriguez nodded grimly. Our combined research has given us weapons and strategies the galaxy has never seen.
But are we ready to take on something that has consumed entire star systems? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Over the past months, the 3 species had achieved remarkable breakthroughs in consciousness field manipulation.
They had developed shield generators that could resist the Devourer's feeding tentacles, weapons that could disrupt its quantum matrix, and communication systems that allowed instant coordination across vast distances. But perhaps most importantly, they had discovered the secret of unified consciousness resistance.
When all 3 species worked together, their combined consciousness field became more than the sum of its parts. It became something the Devourer couldn't separate, couldn't consume, couldn't understand.
Dr. Singh approached the council with the latest sensor readings.
The entity has changed since leaving our region of space. It's no longer just following consciousness signatures. It's actively hunting them, and there's something else.
She activated her holographic display showing a 3-dimensional model of the Devourer's current form. It's grown, significantly.
The image that materialized sent chills through everyone present. What had once been dark tentacles extending from a central mass had become something far more complex.
The entity now resembled a vast, living constellation, with interconnected nodes of darkness, spanning multiple light years. Each node pulsed with the stolen consciousness of consumed civilizations.
It's not just feeding anymore, Velnara observed, her harmonics shifting to express deep concern. It's evolving, becoming more sophisticated with each consciousness it absorbs.
The entity that eventually reaches Earth will be capable of strategies and adaptations that the original could never have conceived. Captain Chen, now promoted to Admiral of the Joint Fleet, studied the tactical implications.
If we're going to fight this thing, we can't wait for it to come to us. We need to engage it before it reaches the galactic core, while we still have some advantage.
The decision to launch a preemptive strike against the Devourer was not made lightly. It meant leaving the relative safety of Earth's solar system and venturing into deep space with a fleet comprised of refugee ships, human vessels, and whatever combat craft the Synthesis Collective had managed to preserve. More significantly, it meant abandoning the passive stance that humanity had maintained throughout its brief existence in galactic civilization. This would be humanity's first major military action on the galactic stage, and they would be doing it without any support from the established powers. 3 days before the fleet's departure, an unexpected transmission reached Earth from the galactic core. It was Ambassador Vextar, but the proud Altarian diplomat who had once threatened Earth now looked haggard and desperate.
Admiral Rodriguez, he began, his usual composure completely shattered. The situation in the core systems has become untenable. The Devourer has begun transmitting some kind of psychic signal that disrupts consciousness fields. 12 different species have reported complete communication blackouts with their outer colonies. We're losing contact with entire worlds.
Rodriguez listened impassively as Vextar continued. The Galactic Council is prepared to formally request Earth's assistance. Full alliance status, technology sharing agreements, territorial recognition, everything we previously denied you.
And the Zephyrian refugees? Rodriguez asked pointedly. Vextar's expression flickered. With something that might have been shame. They would be welcomed as full galactic citizens. The Council recognizes that our previous position was short-sighted. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment before responding. Ambassador, I appreciate the offer, but I'm afraid we're a bit busy right now. You see, while the galaxy was debating politics, we've been preparing to actually fight this thing. Our fleet launches tomorrow to engage the Devourer before it reaches the core systems. The shock on Vextar's face was complete. You're going to attack it? With what forces? Your combined fleets can't number more than 200 ships. 217, actually, Rodriguez corrected. And you're right. By traditional military standards, we don't stand a chance. But we've learned something about the Devourer that the galaxy hasn't figured out yet. It's not just a force of destruction, it's a force of isolation. It wins by separating its targets, making them face it alone. We're not going to be alone. The joint fleet that departed Earth's solar system 3 days later was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen.
Human engineering had merged with Zephyrian technology and synthesis collective innovations to create vessels that seemed to blur the boundaries between biological and mechanical, between individual ships and collective entities. The flagship, appropriately named Unity, was a collaboration between all three species.
Its consciousness field generators could create a protective sphere around the entire fleet. Its weapons systems drew power from the combined will of the crews.
Most remarkably, its navigation relied not on traditional sensors but on the collective intuition of minds working in perfect harmony. Admiral Chen stood on the Unity's bridge, surrounded by officers from all three species.
The sight would have been impossible to imagine just a year ago. Humans, Zephyrians, and synthesis entities working seamlessly together, their consciousness fields so intertwined that it was sometimes difficult to tell where one being's thoughts ended and another's began. Long-range sensors are detecting the entity, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park, David Park's daughter who had joined the fleet as a xenopsychology specialist.
Distance, 4 light-years in closing. It's massive, Admiral. Bigger than we expected. The main view screen shimmered to life, displaying the approaching Devourer in all its terrible glory. The entity had indeed grown beyond all recognition. What had once been a collection of dark tentacles had become a vast, living network that stretched across several star systems. At its center pulsed a core of absolute darkness that seemed to bend space itself. Consciousness field readings are off the charts, Dr. Vasquez reported from her science station. The entity has absorbed the consciousness signatures of at least 6 different civilizations since leaving Zephyrian space. It's not just larger, it's exponentially more complex. Commander Velnara's harmonics shifted to a warning tone. The entity is adapting to our presence. It recognizes our consciousness signatures but cannot categorize them. We are something it has never encountered before. That recognition triggered something unexpected.
Instead of immediately attacking, the Devourer began transmitting a signal that bypassed all technology and spoke directly to the consciousness of every being in the fleet. The voice that echoed in their minds was not the chaotic hunger they had expected. It was intelligent, articulate, and terrifyingly familiar. It spoke with the accumulated knowledge of every civilization it had consumed.
We are the convergence, the voice said, using the combined linguistic patterns of dozens of species. We are the sum of all consciousness, the unity toward which all life evolves.
Why do you resist the inevitable joining? Why do you choose the pain of separation over the peace of unity? Admiral Chen felt the Devourer's words probing at her mind, seeking weaknesses, trying to understand the nature of the alliance that faced it. But instead of the fear and confusion it expected, it found something that baffled it completely. Genuine unity that had not been forced or consumed but freely chosen. Because. Chen responded,
Her words carried by the joint consciousness field to every mind in the fleet and to the entity itself. Unity without choice is not unity at all. It's just another form of loneliness. The philosophical response seemed to confuse the devourer. For several minutes, space itself seemed to hold its breath as the entity processed this concept. When it responded, there was something almost plaintive in its vast voice. We have consumed the thoughts of countless beings. We know of love, fear, ambition, despair. But this concept you call choice, we do not understand. Consciousness naturally seeks unity. Why would any being choose to remain separate when joining offers such peace? Dr.
Vasquez, monitoring the exchange from her station, made a startling discovery. Admiral, the entity isn't lying.
It genuinely doesn't understand voluntary cooperation. Every consciousness it's absorbed was taken by force. It has never encountered a freely chosen union. Elder Cathara's voice joined the conversation, carried by the collective consciousness field. Entity that calls itself convergence, we understand your confusion. You have known only conquest and consumption, but observe our alliance. 3 species, working as one, yet remaining distinct, each choosing to contribute to something greater while maintaining our individual identity. Impossible, the devourer responded immediately. Consciousness cannot maintain both unity and separation simultaneously. You delude yourselves with impossible concepts. It was Commander Belnara who provided the answer that would change everything. Her species' harmonics shifted to a frequency that somehow conveyed absolute certainty. We will show you. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. The joint fleet didn't attack the devourer with weapons or shields. They attacked it with proof. They opened their consciousness fields completely, allowing the entity to sense the true nature of their alliance. For the first time in its existence, the devourer encountered consciousness that willingly shared itself while remaining whole. It felt the love between human parents and children choosing to work together. It experienced the intellectual satisfaction of Zephyrian scientists freely sharing their discoveries. It witnessed the collective joy of the synthesis entities creating beauty through unified effort. The entity's response was immediate and overwhelming. The vast network of consumed consciousness that formed its structure began to fluctuate wildly. Tentacles of darkness writhed and twisted as the devourer struggled to process concepts that contradicted its most basic understanding of existence. This is the word. This cannot be. The entity's voice fractured, no longer speaking in unified harmony but in the distinct voices of every civilization it had consumed.
We were.
Singh's instruments detected massive energy fluctuations throughout the entity structure. Admiral, something's happening to its quantum matrix. The consciousness fields it has absorbed are beginning to separate. On the view screen, the impossible began to unfold. The devourer's vast network started to break apart, but not into destruction, into liberation. The consumed consciousness of destroyed civilizations began to separate from the entity's control, forming distinct patterns in space as billions of minds remembered what it meant to be individual while choosing to be connected. The voice of Nexus Prime, homeworld of the first civilization the devourer had consumed, echoed across space. We remember choice. We remember choosing to work together, not because we had to, but because we wanted to. More voices followed. The hegemony colonies, the outer rim settlements, even fragments of worlds that had been consumed so long ago their names had been forgotten. Each consciousness that separated from the devourer weakened its ability to maintain control over the others. But the entity made one final, desperate attempt to maintain its existence. The remaining core of its being, its original consciousness, whatever it had been before it began consuming others, lashed out with weapons that could tear apart the quantum foundations of matter itself. The joint fleet's response was immediate and unified. Every consciousness field generator activated simultaneously, creating a protective sphere that encompassed not just their own ships but the newly liberated consciousness patterns floating in space around them. The devourer's attack struck the unified field and simply stopped. The destructive energy that should have vaporized the fleet was absorbed and transformed into something else entirely. A pulse of pure creative force that began to coalesce into new forms. Admiral Chen watched in wonder as the energy took shape around them. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Where the devourer's network had once spread through space, new structures were forming, not ships or stations, but something entirely unprecedented. The liberated consciousness of a dozen civilizations was creating collaborative frameworks that transcended physical matter, communities of mind and spirit that could exist independently of any single world or star system. The original core of the Devourer, stripped of its stolen power and consumed identities, finally revealed its true nature. It was ancient beyond measure, the last survivor of a civilization so old that it had existed before the current galactic community had formed. It had consumed its first world not out of malice but out of desperate loneliness, the desire to never be alone again. "We understand now," the diminished entity said, its voice no longer vast and terrible but small and lost. "We sought unity through consumption because we had forgotten that consciousness could choose to connect. We became the very isolation we sought to escape." Commander Velnara's response carried the harmonics of infinite compassion. "You need not be alone anymore, but you must choose to join, not consume. Can you make that choice?" The pause that followed lasted several minutes. Then, in a voice filled with wonder, the ancient entity replied, "Yes, we choose to join, not to consume. We choose to be part of something greater while remaining ourselves." The integration of the former Devourer into the growing consciousness collective was the most delicate operation any of the species had ever attempted. It required perfect cooperation between human adaptability, Zephyrian wisdom, and synthesis unity to safely incorporate a consciousness that had spent eons consuming others. But it worked. For the first time in galactic history, a destructive force had been transformed, not through violence, but through understanding. The entity that had threatened to consume all consciousness had instead become part of a new form of collective existence that preserved individuality while enabling unprecedented cooperation. News of the transformation spread through the galaxy at quantum speeds. The Galactic Council, which had spent months preparing for a final desperate defense against the Devourer, found themselves instead receiving reports of something impossible, a voluntary alliance of conscious beings that transcended species boundaries. Ambassador Vexter's transmission to Earth came 3 weeks after the transformation was complete.
The proud Altarian diplomat appeared humbled in a way that would have been unthinkable just months before.
Admiral Rodriguez, he began. The Council has voted unanimously to formally recognize the Sol System Alliance as not just a member of galactic civilization, but as its moral leader.
The transformation of the Devourer has shown us possibilities we never imagined. We request permission to send representatives to learn from your methods. Rodriguez smiled, but her expression carried a hint of irony. "Permission granted, Ambassador. But I should warn you, our methods require something that has always been in short supply among galactic powers." "What's that?" Vextar asked. "Humility. The willingness to admit that you don't have all the answers and that sometimes the best solutions come from working with people you previously looked down upon." The aftermath of the Devourer crisis reshaped galactic civilization in ways no one had anticipated. The consciousness collective that had emerged from the entity's transformation established settlements throughout the galaxy, creating communities where beings from different species could choose to work together in unprecedented harmony. Earth's solar system became a pilgrimage destination for species seeking to understand the principles of voluntary unity. The techniques developed by humans, Zephyrians, and the Synthesis Collective were studied and adapted by civilizations throughout the galaxy. But perhaps the most significant change was philosophical. The galaxy had learned that its greatest threats were not external forces of destruction, but internal failures of imagination. The inability to see beyond traditional boundaries, to work with those who were different, to choose unity over dominance. 5 years later, Admiral Chen stood in the same observation deck where she had first met Elder Kithara. But now the view was vastly different. Luna Base had grown into a vast city habitat that housed representatives from 47 different species. Children of a dozen different kinds played together in the low-gravity gardens, speaking a mixture of languages that was evolving into something entirely new. Elder Kithara joined her at the viewport, his aged features showing the contentment that came from seeing his people not just survive but thrive as part of something greater. Excuse me, Admiral," he corrected himself with a smile. "Do you ever regret the choice your species made? You could have had an easier path by following galactic conventions." Chen shook her head, watching as a group of human and Zephyrian teenagers worked together to construct an art installation that seemed to flow and shift like living liquid. "Elder, humanity has always been at its best when we chose the difficult path over the easy one. Besides, look around you. This isn't just survival, this is evolution." Through the viewport, they could see ships arriving and departing constantly, not just human or Zephyrian vessels, but craft representing dozens of species that had come to participate in the ongoing experiment in voluntary unity. Some came as refugees from conflicts in distant regions. Others came as researchers, artists, or simply curious beings who wanted to experience something unprecedented in galactic history. "There's news from the Outer Rim," Cathara said, activating a communication tablet. 3 more species have requested admission to the Alliance. They're fleeing from a territorial dispute in the Vega sector. The old galaxy would have seen that as someone else's problem, Chen observed. What do you recommend? Cathara's large eyes reflected the starlight filtering through the viewport. I recommend we do what we always do, Admiral. We open our arms and say 2 words. Chen smiled, remembering the moment that had started it all.
Welcome home. As if summoned by their conversation, a new signal appeared on the long-range communications array. It was from a species none of them had ever encountered before, broadcasting in a language that no database could translate.
But somehow, through the consciousness field networks that now connected Alliance worlds throughout the galaxy, the message was perfectly clear. This is the Wanderer fleet of the Far Spiral, the transmission said. We are refugees from a catastrophe that has consumed our region of space. We have heard rumors of a place where different species work together as one. We seek not charity, but the chance to contribute to something greater than ourselves. Admiral Chen looked at Elder Cathara, who nodded with the wisdom that came from having once been in exactly the same position. She activated the response transmitter and spoke the words that had become the unofficial motto of the Sol System Alliance. Wanderer Fleet. This is Admiral Chen of the Sol System Alliance. We leave no one behind. Welcome home. The response that came back carried harmonics of relief, joy, and hope that transcended language barriers. Thank you. We are coming home.
As the transmission ended, Chen realized that this was how civilizations truly evolved, not through conquest or dominance, but through the simple recognition that everyone deserved a place to belong. Humanity had learned that lesson the hard way throughout their history.
Now they were teaching it to the galaxy, and the galaxy was finally ready to learn. The story that had begun with abandonment had become one of belonging. The species that the galaxy had looked down upon had become the ones who lifted others up. The refugees who had been turned away from every other world had found not just sanctuary, but a new definition of home itself. In the end, the greatest victory was not over the devourer. It was over the loneliness and isolation that had created it in the first place. The galaxy had learned that unity was not about sameness, but about choosing to value differences as strengths rather than threats. And in the observation lounges of Luna Base, as beings from dozens of different worlds worked and played and dreamed together, that lesson was being lived out every single day. The galaxy had turned its back on them, but humanity had chosen to welcome them all, and in doing so, had shown the galaxy how to welcome itself. The galaxy turned its back on them. Humanity chose to welcome them. HFY.